So, how's your afternoon been so far? Useful, productive? I think we always, as teachers, we understand where we are in the day, don't we? And it's 4:15. So we want to try and say useful things that don't duplicate what you said elsewhere and kind of round off the day for you. So yes, we're thinking about documenting work in portfolios, and that's certainly the core of what we want to talk about, but we can plug in any other gaps too that you've got. And perhaps we do that on the back of introducing ourselves until you can see kind of where we're coming from. My name's Mark Hudson. I'm the Programme Director of Graphics and Illustration courses at the University for the Creative Arts at Epsom. We have 3 campuses, Epsom, Farnham and Canterbury. I come from a freelance illustration background. I have a studio in Bethnal Green. So I've been a precarious art worker for more years than I can remember. And I'm particularly happy to talk to people about graphics and illustration and print backgrounds.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Dr. Tom Bort. I am the head of art or equivalent subject lead at Falmouth University in Cornwall. I oversee all the art subjects, including MA Fine Arts, BA Fine Art, BA Drawing, anything with art in it comes my way. And I enter into the world of artistic research. I'm also an artist, but a researcher at the same time. They clash, they work together. And yeah, I'm loving Falmouth at the moment. It's a fantastic place to be, and I'm sure you've seen downstairs all the kind of signage and bits and pieces, so I can answer any questions about that you may have as well.
Good. So just to audit where we are in terms of your own situations. Now, when I was at the stage of applying for art school, I had this crazy notion that somehow I wanted to turn any visual skills I had into some form of career, some form of money. Sorry to use swear words so early in the talk. But can I just cast out to you and say, are you in that sort of position now? Are you thinking about what can I do with these possible talents I have? How narrow is that? How close are you to narrowing that down? Have you got any thoughts about your own position? What do you want to do with your visual talents and abilities? Anybody? Have you already got you want the Maserati, I need to be in Los Angeles in 10 years? Or is it a much broader, more open vision than that? What have you got?
It's more just being able to survive with wanting to create stuff but make money off it so you can pay bills and whatnot.
I like that, and I don't think we should avoid talking about money as if we're living in the 1880s and we just need to be in a garret and make beautiful things. I think we have to squarely address the idea of joining a precarious workforce and living in a very shape-shifting environment. So I'm really glad you raised that, and I think we'd be happy to talk about all those situations at the same time. Anybody else? I'm keen to know how narrow and how focused your view of the current decision is. Everyone clear on what their specialisms are? Do you know kind of where you want to be in terms of, I'm a 3D person, I'm a digital person? How close are we to that?
No?
I'm a bit old.
No.
Looking back as to when I was making all these decisions, I didn't know at all. And you follow a path, and I think where that path takes you, it's often the right place to be. And now, although I did sculpture, I don't produce sculpture anymore, but I still work with museums, remount objects, and that's been our way in. I would never have known at the age of 18, 19 that's what I would do. I don't think you can. But there's so many fields within the art world, and I think an art education teaches you how to think well, and you can apply that to so many things. And I think most people that do with an art education end up loving whatever job it is that they end up doing.
We're I think we're, as artists, first of all, I think we're problem solvers. That's what we say. Yeah. We are all problem solvers. It's what we do. It differentiates us from other careers in the arts or with the field of art practice. Or other practices. It's a really important skill that we nurture from day one on a degree, and I'm sure at A-level and college as well, with the beginning of that journey. I think, going back to when I was 19, I was deciding, I think, what to do. I felt something in here, I don't want to sound cheesy, but a passion for it. I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do. quite then, but I knew that fine art or the arts in that time was going to show me a pathway, and I trusted it. And I think that's a big thing. I think that's why we're here today. We kind of got an interest in the arts, haven't we? So we want to discuss that and open that up.
The reason I chucked it out to you is because of the subject matter for this thing, which is about documenting work. And I wanted to get a sense of, do you already have a difficult project that you want to document? When we were in the last session, was anyone here at the 3 o'clock session? Then thank you. You'll have heard us talk about, if you make work out of ice, how do I start to deal with these sort of things? So I just wanted to get a sense of whether you have anything already that you're talking about to help us narrow it down. And perhaps, Tom, we should start with the subject of the talk, and then we can widen it out and follow up what everybody is thinking about. So you've all at some point, you'll need to put together a portfolio in the coming weeks, months, ready for application and interview. Maybe the UCAS date of 25th January, maybe beyond that, or a cycle through clearing. And you're probably picturing to yourself, I've got that half-finished 12-foot canvas, and how do I do it? I've got this nice little sculpture I made, but it's not really set, and so on. How do I start to document those? Are those the sort of questions you're asking yourselves? Because there's some very straightforward things to say about that, which is, and again, apologies to the two people who are here at 3 o'clock, we'd love it if you can bring those things into the interview, but you do not have to. If you want to sit on the train up from Exeter with a big semi-set piece of sculpture, clay, getting all over the first-class seats, great, good luck to you. Equally, you might want to think about how to document these things for a couple of reasons I'll go on to talk about, so that you don't have to bring up the originals. We talked about ice sculptures. Tom, in your practice, there'll be all sorts of difficult formats, won't there, which are kind of problematic?
Yeah, there are, yeah. We encounter lots of different types of portfolios and bits and pieces that people are making performances, making films, they're making sculptures out of ice, they're making humongous prints, canvases, they're socially engaged practice, site-based practice, which you can't move a site to an interview. So we encourage people to learn to record their work during their A-levels or college or foundation, whatever it might be, and take time to do that and not to rush it, and to think about the equipment that they're using to record that work, particularly cameras. I don't know if we're going to touch on this and the methods of cameras, but we all have smartphones. Mine's somewhere, lost it. Some are great, and some are also not that great. And I think we need to be careful about relying on these. They're quite handy. We're out there photographing. These cameras are fantastic nowadays. But I also, do trust in that good SLR camera with a tripod to photograph work. Do you guys have access to those sort of things at college and school? Do you use them? Yeah, well, that's fantastic. But he's all shaking no, yeah. It's absolutely fine. I just think that taking time, let's go to the bare bones of it, taking time to record work in a good space, thinking about the lighting, thinking about the camera settings, will do your work the world of good when it translates to a screen.
Yeah. Should we start with the basics, right? Picture for me, if you can, in your minds, the most difficult piece of work that you're thinking of. How do I document it? Yeah? Does everyone nod for me if you've got something in your mind like that? Yeah? I won't pounce on you quite yet. I'll leave that for a little bit. But I'm going to try and think of something difficult myself. Do you know the work of Richard Long, who is a landscape artist? Okay? And here's a piece of work. He walked backwards and forwards in a line week after week until he wore a path into the grass. Are you familiar with this? And it's called the line, path as a line, something like this, right? Yeah. So what's actually happening there? And if he was taking that work for interview, what does he actually want to say to the interview panel? What does he want to say? Yeah? And that requires us to think about what's the meaning of what he's doing. Now, do you have to be present to watch the walking to understand that experience best? Yeah, well, ideally, you'd be with him on that journey. Then, if he's finished it, can you go and visit the place where Richard Long did the walking and look at the path live and maybe walk it yourself? It's kind of quite immersive, isn't it? What's the next stage? We pull out one more. He photographs it, and we look at a photograph of Richard Long, his path, and how he did it. Maybe then a camera crew come along and interview him and talk about the making of me walking up and down a line for a path. And we get to see all the backstory and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Or, here's another one. 3 decades later, the path's overgrown and it's fenced off in a museum and we've got display panels and interpretation boards. Do you see there's at least 5 layers already there of different types of meaning, where the meaning of that thing is made, and what the art object might be in there? Is the art in the path, or in the act of photographing the path, or in the photograph of the path? I'm going to suggest to you, each time somebody looks at the photograph of his path, they make their individual meanings with that picture. Yep. You know, this is straightforward meaning theory. So apply that now, if you would, to all of those objects you've held in your head, your difficult things that I need to record somehow. And you can immediately run past them a whole host of different recording media, the ones we've just been touching on, you know, tape recording, sketching, going and photographing, documenting, making a documentary around it, which are all recording media around your event, around your art thing. And the way you're going to decide is, well, what is the meaning of your piece of work and how is it best communicated? Let's put this over to you now and let's try and work this out on some examples. I won't use the phrase workshop because we only say that if we're actually working in light engineering. But let's think about workshopping this a bit. Can someone give me an example of a really tricky thing to document that you're up against? What are you up against? What are you up against?
No, I was just thinking like a complex painting, like a very big complex painting.
That's nice. Did everyone catch that? A big complex painting. And let's just to be clear, when you say complex, do you mean it's 3 dimensions, or it's done in lots of media, it's fragile?
Well, maybe it's like I often think that abstract art is very hard to understand, and sometimes you don't know how to describe what that is. Or like things that have too much elements to them. There's an interesting example, and let's chase this down. Is it something you could photograph and the photograph would make sense? Is it something you could write about and the writing or a spoken narrative about it would make more sense? And we might not get to the answer today, but for every one of you, you're going to be able to do this simple test of apply 4 or 5 different recording techniques to your own pieces, and then show it to somebody who doesn't know the work at all, and see what it communicates. Because on some level, your piece of work has got to communicate the feeling, the set of emotions that you tried to invest in the object to an audience who may or may not be present at the piece. Let's see if we can apply it to something else. Who else has got an example? Give us the trickiest thing you've got. That was quite a nice one, thank you. What else have we got? Yes? A big scroll, that's kind of nice. Yeah.
Okay, so that could be, I mean, I don't know, how long would it be? Quite long. Approximately meters long, a big one. Okay, so, and again, unless taken to an interview, which sometimes isn't the case, you know, sat on that train, it's not going to be possible. You know, there's various ways through digital photography that you could photograph it in sections and very carefully, piece it together in a stitch of some sort, but only if it is equivalent to the work as best as possible, you know. We could then kind of navigate that through the screen, through the laptop, etc., and kind of enlarge as we do with the pictures on Instagram and just check things out. Again, going back to the nuts and bolts of it, the settings on that camera need to be really, really high so that we can get that great, that complex kind of abstract painting, for example, the brush stroke or pencil. I don't know what method you're using. Painting, okay, painting. So again, the brush stroke and the colours. So yeah, taking time over that, sounds a bit tech, settings, to be able to sort, and I'd rather see less images with higher quality than loads of images that are low pixel, low res, that just don't do your work any justice.
This is a really nice example because there may be a few of us who've got pieces of work like that which are strange formats and they unroll and so on, so I think it's a good one to stay on.
And it probably asks you to do something which we'd all need to do, which is think about the meaning of the work first and what you want it to say. So for instance, I'm picturing a scroll, like a loo roll or a piece of wallpaper. If the images start at one end and they're a linear, like a long strip cartoon, and they finish at the other, might it be like that? Then actually, yes, we could document it statically, but you might want to film it. And you might want to run a camera dolly, pin it out along the floor, and run a dolly like a fixed camera on a trolley just along the top. So what we see is a moving image piece, which is in fact a series of stills, if you like, strung together. Then I'd immediately think, ooh, what's the sound? What's the audio behind that? Do I have a narrator? Like you're there going, frame 1, and we are looking at a pink, Or do you want some music? Or do you want just background sound like that? Because that's going to amplify the meaning that you're trying to invest in this piece. That's a good example.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it. And again, we can talk in a bit about the technical specifics, because Tom's right, anytime you show us a photograph or a film, of course, we go straight through, the technology should be transparent, and we go through the film to the object, but we also learn something about your ability to run the back end of a camera or to run moving image settings, your resolution, your cropping, all of the things that are backstage things. Have we got any other examples? Let's just start to
This is good. I like
cover
that.
the bases. Yes.
I've actually, so for part of my art project, I'm looking at death and decay. So I've got like 2 slices of moulding bread, and you can't bring that
Brilliant.
to like an interview. So
Brilliant.
I don't know. I don't know. There's Tupperware, you can't know.
This is such a nice example. Who can suggest, there's a really nice fix to this, how would you film that decaying bread?
Time-lapse.
Yes, time-lapse. I think we need, when you think about what you want to say in the bread, you started to talk about death and so on, the process of moving from life to death and so on, we need a time-lapse, don't we? We need stop motion through all the stages, then you speed it up and you play it backwards and you put some type over it, and it really goes somewhere. Yep, so that's a really nice fix.
Tupperware as well, it's fine. All the way to Falmouth.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Workshopping your ideas. This is good.
This is a surgery at the moment of us fixing your individual things. We'll get the idea up on the ramps and we'll start looking at underneath the vehicle. But it might be good to touch in on some kind of basic rationales here. And here's one which we shared with the 3 o'clock people. Apologies again for duplicating. Why might you want to document something in the first place? Yes, it's messy. You don't want to put it on the train seats. It's too fragile. You don't want to break it. It's super valuable. You need to leave it in a vault somewhere. Yeah. But there's a couple of other pretty good reasons. When you're all professional artists and there's a gallery in Hong Kong or Sao Paulo that wants your work, how are you going to show them? How are you going to convey the essence of your mouldy sandwich to that art director in Tokyo? You're going to need to document it, and you're going to need to really do it justice, because that is the thing that sells your work. So you're demonstrating to us a set of competencies that you understand how to document the piece, the lighting, the framing, the setting, all the things that amplify the meaning. So you can send it anywhere, yeah? And you'll need to do this worldwide. We could give you lots of examples about that, but we've already talked about things that decay and rot away, ice sculptures, fruit, etc., etc. You've got the choice between static and moving image things. I'll tell you from a looking at portfolios point of view, moving stuff is always more engaging. Did anyone come here on the underground today and maybe the posters on the escalator move when you look at them? This is now the sidebars on the internet all move just to keep us engaged, because our brains are wired for those sort of cognitive experiences. So I would suggest to all of you, think about using moving image in your documentation somehow. And I'll just let that moving image disappear. Here's a nice bit of reassurance. This is a really good time to get into moving image. When I was at uni, you had to go and hire like a super video, massive camera and all this sort of equipment and blah, blah, blah.
Sat on your shoulder like this.
Now, of course, you've got it right next to you, and it's a really good time for lo-fi, for informal documenting. There's whole school, the whole PhD's written about that stuff. So do not fret about the getting some super piece of equipment before you start. The second thing is, of course, You're in an interview, you want to show them this thing, what do you do? Well, you're going to need to post it somewhere that you can go back to in nearly any situation. So I would suggest putting it on a website or having it on a device. Don't be hostage to where the Wi-Fi is like in your interview or something. Have it on a server or on a host that's local to you that you can access at any time. Did you ever have trouble in an interview, Tom, by you don't want to look at someone's phone or their iPad? Because I love that stuff, you know.
Yeah, no, it's no problem at all. It's just that we're really open to it. It's just like you say, if it doesn't work, you know, we really feel for the applicant when you're sat there with me in a room or my colleague or something like that, and you're just going, it's not working. I've got half an hour, it's not working, and we can't help you, you know, because you've come to us and you're going to showcase your work. And unfortunately, the tech doesn't work. So double, triple check it works. That's a really important little thing to say.
That is just, I mean, you know this because you've done those set piece interviews. You can make it really stressful for yourself. Like, what if the Wi-Fi doesn't work? What if my ice sculpture melts? Or you can make it really blissful and straightforward because of the setups. You know, you're in charge of these scenarios, let's face it. You did the work, you're the boss. We're just there listening to the authority talking about something you've made. So when you flip it around like that, actually you're running the show, yeah? And just make it easy for yourself. So how are we going to leave the session here and start to do this with your difficult objects? What are we going to do? And I'm going to suggest a practice for you that you might set up today, going forward right across your design practices, that will be really handy. Who's got a kind of, what I think of as a man drawer? Sorry to gender this. Who's got a man drawer at home where there's all their stuff, they can't be bothered to sort it out? Yeah? Anyone got something like that? I just scoop everything off the table, put it in there. Mum's coming around.
Drawer.
I'm going to clear it up, I push it in there. Okay, you're going to need a digital person drawer of some kind for this. You're going to need to start to build what I think of as an asset cupboard, a digital file which just holds onto and documents stages of your process so that when it comes to put these shows together, you've got all these things in one place. So what are you going to have in this digital, imagine for yourself a digital cupboard, if you like. And on one thing, you've got all the high-res photos you took of your mouldy sandwich. Yep. Then on the next thing, you've got films I took of my sandwich. Then next drawer, you've got me taking overview shots of the sandwich with my friends showing it around the room. Then you've got a time lapse, which you're going to stitch together of all the things showing the thing as it moulded. Then you've got interviews with your friends reacting to the sandwich when you do the reveal with the Tupperware, you know? And you've just got these assets in a big digital cupboard somewhere, not on here ideally, but on a hard drive that you can save and you can back up, you take it remotely with you. You've got high-res ones, you've got low-res ones. So you've got a kit, you've got a toolkit, and you can just pull these off and put them into whatever format is needed for your next interview or your next appointment. Who's got that digital cupboard already? Who's got that cupboard of digital? We've all got the person drawer we talked about, haven't we? Who's got a digital cupboard?
There's a kind of flinch there. Describe your digital cupboard. Yeah. I tell you what, being organised is no bad thing. I think it's really important during this phase in your practice. You're doing a lot, you're working quickly, encourage to work quickly at school, college, whatever. And sometimes those nuggets get lost. You know, that mark you made on that painting, or that canvas or whatever, and then you move to the next and you can't get that thing back. If your instinct tells you that's got to be recorded, pick it up and do it. And then just at the end of the day, teachers sort of archive it. You know, and then you can, as we're saying, when it's ready, you can start to select and move things around for your portfolio. I don't do it all the time. I should. You know, we're full fair that we don't have time, but try as much as you can to sort of, set a timer. In a classroom, when you've done a 3-hour session with your art teacher, whatever, halfway through, I'm just going to take a photograph of what I've done today.
I'm just going to illustrate that by showing you, this is me with my first year students last week, and we were making booklets on how to have ideas. Now, of course, I'm going around documenting these because I want to brag about it and put it on our social media, but this is the sort of diary of that day unfolding, including documenting people as they were doing the work, then as it came together when they presented, and then the stuff in a slightly more formal
presented situation. Now, you don't need to look closely at my phone, I think, to understand what I'm saying. That I'd encourage you to always document the stuff as you go along, because then, yes, you're building those assets, as Tom says. You're also starting to reflect about the work to make it better, because you're capturing the work and stopping, and your mind is doing a little layer of analysis as you go. It's making notes about it, notes to self as to how I can improve it. So if you start this practice, this digital cupboard practice, your work is going to get better because you're introducing another layer of reflection as you go. Is anyone unconfident about technology and how to record stuff? Does anyone have the heebie-jeebies about, I don't know, After Effects, or how to run moving image, or how to use a sound recorder or anything like that?
So that example that you just got there, you're recording your students.
Yeah.
Something. So on a phone in this situation, that doesn't come across very well to us. How would you present that to us?
On here, in this situation,
Yeah.
what I do...
You used a phone, which didn't really give us, we couldn't really see it. So what would you do?
No. What I do when I do workshops, I would airdrop it to your computer and then make it straight into a slideshow through JPEGs. But of course, in a presentation situation, when you're in an interview, you'd have prepared it and you'd have it ready to go as a slideshow. This is the stuff that goes into your digital cupboard. This isn't stuff that you want to show, you know.
I was wondering what you would do next to get it to the stage where you can use it as an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, stitching it together.
I think then you're talking about cropping and editing, changing the resolution to the outputs that you want. If you're going to print, you want 300 dpi, and you want things that are going to fit your print size. If you're going to screen size, anyone know the pixel size of a display screen like this? Get the tattoo. 768 by 1024 pixels. There's no need to make a resolution bigger than that, because the resolution of most screens isn't bigger than that. So do not make 7 gigabyte files. You're just going to make it hard for yourself. You know, they're slow to upload. They take forever to actually share, and there's unnecessary resolution. So yes, we could do some time on the technical stuff about how to save and how to get resolution. But I have a feeling that you're all across that, and it's very searchable. I'm personally more interested in what format you choose to actually document something in. And I'm going to suggest a couple of others that you might find unusual, is that you might want to counter-document something, okay? Stay with me on this. You've got someone doing a performance piece and a drama, and you know, your friend's doing some acting or fashion show, and you're there with your camera and stuff. Great, you're ready to go. Equally, you might want to do some fashion illustrations live while you're watching it. Yeah. So use a non-intuitive, a non-natural format to record it, because it says something else about you as an applicant. It talks about you're editing the experience and you're pulling those images, and it'll make it look very different in an interview. So you might want to apply an unusual documenting technique that's out of the ordinary. Can you think of that in terms of the thing we set you to do with your own difficult subject? Can you think of a less natural way to do it that doesn't immediately suggest itself? Because this is going to mark you out in a portfolio. How would you do a sound recording of a sculpture? There are sculpture parks like this, and if you've gone to partially sighted sculpture parks, this is exactly what they do. You know, are you going to? Who's a horror fan? Horror movies? Semi. Good. Okay, yeah. Stay with me on this. They will always do a reaction shot in a horror movie because it's more effective than showing the grisly thing. Think of your classic Hitchcock. You don't want to see all the gore. You just see the effect on somebody. Yeah. So can you show the effect on somebody of a sculpture or a painting? Could you show it in the reflection or in somebody's reaction to it? Show the audience in a performance. Show the shadows and reflections of a sculpture on something else, on water or something moving.
All those things are really interesting. Sorry, sirens. You know, someone said large-scale paintings and large-scale sculptures. I think, you know, the basics of things and reminding us that of the scale is by maybe photographing that work with someone in front of it. Installations, for example, projections that you might be making at school or college that people participate in. And if participation is really important to the work to understand it for a viewer, put someone in there get someone in front of that projected screen or that painting or that major print to sort of understand the scale and how we should come to it, if that's the way forward, or a film of that experience, of that installation. Because, you know, some things are really hard to photograph, and by putting, or film or document, by putting another person in there or a group of people, it grounds it for the interviewer or the person.
I've got some things here, and you don't need to look at the screen, but I'm going to use them as points to make about different types of work and how you document them. I've got the making of kind of slides. I've got things that are showing a finished thing in situ. I've got 3D things in a setting, so you see people using them. Occasionally there's bits of artwork, but I think you'll see here the majority of things aren't the actual design, they show the design being used in a context. And why is this? Because the meaning of nearly everything we make in a design setting, it only comes to life and it only has meaning when it's in the hands of a user, whether it's spectacles or a film or something like that. So think of something you make yourself. Yeah, I come from an illustration background. I did an illustration, sent it off this morning for a whiskey magazine in Scotland. Now, I could show you the digital file for that, or I could show it printed in the magazine. But take it a stage further. You might get a printed copy of a magazine and lay it out, or show somebody reading it over their shoulder, or show it screwed up on the floor of the underground that night to talk about the impermanence of media, or have somebody reading the article out and talking. Do you see? And those are much more engaging than just showing flat artwork.
Saying that term, that grounding, they really ground the context and the subject matter. You know, equally, talk about, I've got a friend who's a colleague of an illustrator of children's books. You know, to photograph a book in its page, I couldn't, you know, I'm not an illustrator, so it's kind of beyond me a little bit, but the way that this person recorded it for the marketing was fantastic, and the portfolio is a marketing document. So it's sort of, you know, there was a child there, a dog, it's a kind of Christmas book, and it kind of brought flavour to the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? It made it pop, and I understood it more by adding things in. So what we're trying to say is, if you're kind of not into just putting a piece of paper on, or a book on a table and photographing like this, then put something else to it, bring something else in there to help us understand. A hand, I don't know, an object, something that gets us to understand the flavour of things, really.
Anyone here do sculpture or make 3D work? Stick up a hand. Ceramics, anything like that? Good, yeah. Those are traditionally the sort of like, do I take my beautiful porcelain pieces to an interview or something? Nearly, most ceramics are, you know, you've got thrown and you've got hand built, haven't you? And so many of those are to do with tableware. Tableware is going to come to life when it's got some content in it and it's being used, he said, nearly tipping tea down himself. So immediately try and photograph it in those settings, you know. And then, of course, you put it on a park bench versus you put it on a really nice table in a setting like this. You're changing the meaning of that piece through the setting and the context that you put it in. So I would immediately start, you need to interrogate your own intentions here and what you think the piece, what you want to say about the piece before you can start to take those documenting decisions. I'm looking at my mobile device and we've got another 10 minutes. So I wonder whether we open it up to you and to a little surgery of specific instances of things you'd like to cover. Again, by all means, if you feel we're done, feel free to cheerio, it'd be nice to see you. But if other people would like to perhaps come further down the front and ask us some specifics, we'd be very glad to go through that. Tom,
I've noticed a lot of writing, some notes, people taking notes, which is good. I said this in the other group, which means there's questions. Maybe. No. I'm not picking it up for writing. About the ceramics at the back there, are you documenting your work at the moment?
Yeah.
How are you finding it?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky, but it's like, yeah.
Is it because of the setting, or you can't get that kind of like the dimensions of the pop? What's the deal?
Like trying to document scale and
Cheers.
how it looks in real life versus in a photograph. So what you're saying is like how to put it in different settings.
Yeah, I mean, you come back, you know, come to the core bits and pieces, you know, lighting, and I'm always for, obviously it depends on the context again, but natural light, if you can get that and harness that on that object, then brilliant. If you can't, and it's got to be this sort of light, just you've probably found it, that goes very yellow in an image, and you're like, oh, so make sure those settings are correct. The less you have to do in Photoshop, the better, because I think as soon as you start adding things to an image like that, it becomes a little bit kind of plastic and artificial. How big are these pots?
Quite big, yeah.
Great.
I don't know how big exactly, but quite big.
Good.
There are a few ways in which your current college or school can probably help. You may well have a darkroom. You may well have what we think of as an infinity curve, which is a curve that just makes the hard shadows on things disappear. And you may well have rolls of coloured paper or backgrounds or green screen or things like this that can really lift your process. Now, I'd encourage everybody to use half term or whatever, go into those rooms and get to know the technicians, buy them a cup of tea, get to use the cameras and stuff, not only because it'll make your work, it'll give you a really nice, that digital cupboard of assets, but you're teaching yourself a skill. And you're probably thinking about your work in a new way, where if I look at that and now that I photograph it, the shadows are a bit hard, and I'm going to try the curves differently when I make that in future. I'm going to make it transparent so I can see the liquid. Have you got those facilities where you are? Have you got any untapped digital or recording suites or anything? And again, they're kind of easier to use now, way easier than they were back in the day when, we had to use great big clunky cameras and, lights that got super hot and so on, and you needed facilities. So really good time to go and do that. I would also encourage you to find locations out in public space, leading on from points we've already made, that really are unusual for your objects, that bring them to life. And this is what I was saying about counter-documenting stuff. What will be the least pottery people? What will be the least likely place to see your porcelain? On a dance floor, inside an iron foundry. They're going to really raise curiosity because you're seeing them on the floor of the underground. And we're all meeting, don't tread on it, don't tread on it. In a zoo, I don't know, somewhere really that makes the interviewer go, hang on, this is an interesting person because they counter, I've just made up that term, by the way, but they've posited this object in a really new and interesting place for me. And it gives them another layer of reasons to be interested in you.
It's a bit like fashion photography, isn't it? You can take the same dress and you can put it in a studio, you can take it down to the beach, you could whatever. It's the same dress, but it's showing it in lots of different ways.
Yeah,
to raise curiosity. Yeah.
Imagine if we only saw clothes on a hanger, without being on bodies and in situations. How unrich that would be in terms of conveying the essence of those designs. Who else has got fashion objects to think about, maybe? Anyone do a 50-50 wobble for me, or a maybe, or no? What are your objects that you need to document, people? What are they? Oh, okay.
You're not at that phase.
It's early days. It's early days.
What about you? Are you doing anything?
I've got quite a mix, but because I'm doing fine art at school, it's mostly just flat images. And I've got the odd sculpture, and I'm doing media as well.
Right.
So I've got like an interview I feel mostly just kind of paintings.
Okay. Yeah. Again, going back to those kind of scales, of size, if you can get some into that space to lean over it or be against it, then we'll understand it, as with the detail, because we are keen to see what's going on in those brushstrokes, but also sections that you find important that we can kind of elaborate on in the discussions with us.
We've got half term coming up soon, haven't we, everyone? Looking forward to that, another week and a bit. Use it well, and you could really use it. You've got some space at the rhythm of the year to really do some nutty stuff. So I would suggest, we've already talked to you about going to make friends with your technicians and look at those spaces. Go out and look at the ways in which other art objects are already being seen and displayed and documented. So for instance, a lot of you will maybe go to galleries over half term. What a boring way to look at paintings. Oh my God, walking around looking at stuff that's stuck on a wall. So when you go to those spaces, you start to interrogate the act of display, don't you? And you think about, well, how else could this be done? Maybe I'll project it onto the Houses of Parliament and I'll look at it there because it means something different. So you know the people called Led by Donkeys, and they project stuff in a kind of hacking way onto buildings. That's kind of nice. What's happening in graphics now? is you might hang stuff up like a mobile. So you're in the room, but it swings around gradually. So it's sort of moving while you see it. And now these are things you can do really easily for yourself. You know, you could set up in your own room, you could set up a hanging mobile of your pieces of work, your paintings, your sculptures. Light them at night, you know, get some sparklers out, get a time-lapse camera, and immediately you've got a really compelling, different way. And I suggest it's going to move the work on, because you'll immediately bring in some creative responses to it. So my takeaway from that is, what are you doing with half term? Are you going to use it in an interesting way to go and look at some acts of display and criticize them, interrogate them, apply them to your own situation? Could I do my work like that? You know, do I actually want to be in a gallery? Could I projection map myself or put myself in another public? I'm going to put my pots in the river and photograph them as they float by, you know, and
maybe not.
maybe the sort of remnants, you know.